A very good morning to you, wherever you're watching us from. This is Souq News, and this is your daily show, Early Exchange. My name is Ayo Jimmy. If you called today a Tech Tuesday, Tuesday, maybe you're not too wrong, because today we're looking at 22 years after the GSM service started in Nigeria. What have been the gains? What have been the pains? What way forward? What possibilities exist out there? That is just one part of the story. Then, what is in the name? The .ng domain name is peculiar to Nigeria. It is called the top CCLD for the country. Now, what does it entail? If you brandish a .ng domain name as a brand extension, what does that portend for your business? And of course, when you look at Nigeria and Niger Republic, on the map of Africa, we are just neighbors. But politically, we seem to be very different now. We are very far apart. And how are we managing the diplomatic route between Nigeria and Niger Republic? These are many more issues to take a look at today on the show. It's a bumper package today, I can assure you. But first and foremost, this is a news-based organization, and Ola Oluwawe is standing by to bring you updates in the world of news. Ola, good morning to you. Let's start with you.
Good morning, Ayo Jimmy. Yesterday was power packed. Today is a bumper pack, as you mentioned. It's really interesting. Good morning to you out there, and welcome to the morning news update. I am Ola Oluwawe. Let's go for some of the best business, economic, and developmental occurrences in the world. In a very recent rescue operation in Nigeria, the Nigeria Air Force has successfully rescued a total of 7 kidnapped victims in Kaduna State. Among those rescued were 6 females who had been abducted from Niger State, along with 1 male individual. The Director of Public Relations and Information for the Nigerian Air Force, Air Commodore Edward Gapquet, who released this statement, noted that a rescue mission was carried out by the NAV Special Forces during a night patrol operation on August 6, 2023, near Biringwari in Kaduna State. All rescued individuals are currently receiving medical attention at the NAV's medical facility in Kaduna. Now, the Senate screening process for President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's ministerial nominees reached a significant milestone yesterday after a week of rigorous questioning for some and brief introductions for others. 45 out of 48 nominees were confirmed as cabinet members. Senate President Godswill Akpabio conducted a series of voice votes, with all but 3 nominees receiving approval. The remaining nominees, including Nasir El-Rufai, former governor of Kaduna State, Stella Okotete from Delta State, and Abubakar Danladi from Taraba State, are currently undergoing security clearance and assessment. This confirmation comes after President Tinubu submitted a list of 28 potential ministers to the Senate on July 27. The screening process had been ongoing, with various nominees appearing before the Senate over the past week. The comprehensive screening process concluded yesterday, culminating with the assessment of Muhammad and Festus Keyamo. Away from that, the National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control, NAFDAC, has announced the official gazetting of the revised Fats, Oil and Food Containing Fats and Oil Regulation 2022. This development shared by Professor Mojisola Adeyeye, the Director General of NAFDAC, during a briefing in Lagos, also announced the Pre-Packaged Food Labeling Regulation 2022 to empower consumers with essential information about their food. These regulations align with the 2018 World Health Assembly's global effort to eliminate industrially produced trans fatty acid TFAs from food supplies, contributing to the reduction of non-communicable diseases NCDs worldwide. With partners like the Federal Ministry of Health, Federal Ministry of Justice, and the Trans Fat Coalition partners in Nigeria, Mr. Atoda John of the Federal Ministry of Health emphasized the regulation will be reinforced by appropriate policies and legal measures. The Lagos Court of Appeal has overturned a previous ruling by the Federal High Court, allowing the federal government to actively participate in marriage registrations within specific local government across Nigeria. The initial legal challenge led by Itiosa Local Government Area LGA in Lagos State sparked a larger conversation about the Ministry of Interior's role in marriage registries and ceremonies. Other LGAs also joined the effort, collectively advocating for a more inclusive approach to these processes. The Court of Appeal's recent decision, delivered on August 2, beautifully underscores the collaborative nature of governance, recognizing both federal and local government councils' legal authority in overseeing marriage celebrations, contracts, and registrations. With this legislation, no single level of government holds exclusive control over the meaningful initiation and commemoration of unions between potential couples. And residents of Ikotu Igodo Local Council Development Area LCDA have expressed concern over repeated harassment by council officials regarding alleged open burning of refuse. Their apprehension stems from the fact that enforcing environmental laws falls under the jurisdiction of the State's Ministry of Environment and related agencies rather than local councils. Some officials from the council have been observed recently enforcing regulations against open burning by issuing notices to Isheri area residents and imposing fines ranging from 40,000 naira to 65,000 naira on those found in violation. In a response, the Public Relations Officer of the Lagos State Environmental Protection Agency, LASEPA, Lolajao, clarified that while local councils have a distinct role limited to overseeing environmental sanitation and maintaining local hygiene, the responsibility for enforcing environmental regulations, including addressing issues like refuse burning, exclusively resides with LASEPA. Now, Niger's school leaders have taken the decision to temporarily close the country's airspace, citing concerns of potential military intervention from neighboring nations. This move follows the demand made by the ECOWAS group, consisting of West African states, for the reinstatement of President Mohamed Bazoum by a specified Sunday deadline. ECOWAS had previously cautioned that a junta could face the possibility of military action and is scheduled to convene on Thursday to deliberate on the next course of action. In solidarity, Mali and Burkina Faso, both also governed by juntas, have announced their intention to send officials to Niger. This was after neighboring Nigeria's President Bola Ahmed Tinubu hosted a consultation meeting with governors from Nigerian states that share boundaries with Niger Republic. The attending governors included Ahmed Aliyu of Sokoto State, Umar Namadi of Jigawa, May Mala Buni of Yobe, Idris Nasir of Kebbi, and Dr. Diko Rada of Katsina State. Some northern elites have expressed concerns about a planned offensive against the military junta in Niger, fearing potential consequences for Nigeria. And away from Niger, a controversial referendum in the Central African Republic, CAR, allowing the President Faustin Archange Touadera to run for office without term limits, has been criticized by opponents. Although final results from the election authority are still pending, preliminary results suggest that 95% of the people support the constitutional change. Critics claim the voter turnout was as low as 10% and allege that President Touadera is supported by Russian Wagner mercenaries who have been linked to war crimes. The proposed changes would eliminate the current two-term limit for the presidency and extend the presidential term from 5 to 7 years. Persons with dual citizens would be barred from presidential candidacy unless they give up their other citizenship. In response to these changes, a vice presidential role would be established, appointed by the president. The Senate would be dissolved and Parliament would become a single chamber. While Touadera and his United Hearts Party claim to be acting in accordance with the will of the people, opposition parties and civil society groups boycotted the referendum, deeming it a constitutional coup to solidify Touadera's lifelong rule. They criticized the lack of transparency in the election process and inadequate prior consultation. And away from Africa, Dubai's hotels and tourism are booming, with almost 100 new hotels opening since June 2019. This has added over 30,000 new places to stay, according to official growth data. From June 2019 to June 2023, the number of places to stay went up by 96, reaching a total of 810. Out of this, 37 are new hotels that opened since last June. Dubai now has more tourists than before the pandemic. In fact, in the first half of 2023, there were 8.55 million visitors. This is higher than the 8.36 million visitors in the same time in 2019. There are now more hotel rooms too. In June 2023, there were over 148,600 rooms compared to the over 118,300 in June 2019. Hotels with the highest number of stars are the ones that grew the most. On average, about 78 out of every 100 rooms were being used in the first half of 2023. But the cost to stay in a hotel each night has gone down to about 534 dirham in the first half of 2023 from 567 dirham last June. Analysts believe that even though the cost to stay in a hotel went down a bit this year, it's still higher by 16.4% compared to 2019. This is because places like Sharjah, Dubai, Abu Dhabi and Fujairah had more people staying and they paid more. And away from that, still in the UAE, Abu Dhabi National Oil Company ADNOC has announced that it will be acquiring a 30% ownership stake in the Absheron gas and condensate field located in the Caspian Sea off the coast of Baku, Azerbaijan. This move marks ADNOC's first significant international acquisition of assets related to the extraction of oil and gas resources. ADNOC has entered into a partnership with Total Energies and Azerbaijan state-owned Souq for the acquisition of this ownership stake. As part of the transaction, both Total Energies and Souq will sell 15% of the respective stakes in the project, resulting in each holding a 35% share. This agreement comes shortly after Total Energies announced the commencement of production from the initial phase of the project. This first phase has the capacity to produce 35,000 barrels per day of oil equivalent, comprising approximately 22,000 barrels per day of natural gas and 12,000 barrels per day of condensate. The natural gas is being sold within Azerbaijan, while the condensate is being exported through the Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan pipeline, which has a daily capacity of 1 million barrels. Away from that, Saudi Arabia has announced plans to regulate the charging process for electronic devices through the adoption of USB-C connectors. According to the Saudi Standards, Meteorology and Quality Organization, in conjunction with the Communications, Space and Technology Commission, this standardization effort will unfold in two phases. In the initial stage, starting from the 1st of January 2025, mobile phones and other array of electronic gadgets like headphones, speakers and routers, as well as keyboards, must have USB connectors. Subsequently, the second phase, commencing on the 1st of April 2026, will see laptops and portables also being extended this standardization. The rationale behind this move, according to authorities, is centered around enhancing user convenience, cost reduction, facilitating robust data transfers, and championing environmental sustainability by curtailing electronic waste. Local media sources have reported that this harmonization of charging ports is estimated to help users save up to 170 million Saudi riyal, and the implementation may reduce charges usage by over 2.2 million units yearly. Away from that, following a recent incident in the disputed South China Sea, Manila has taken action by summoning Beijing's ambassador to address the matter. The move comes after Chinese coast guards reportedly blocked and employed water cannons against Philippine vessels. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. informed reporters that the country's Secretary of Foreign Affairs had delivered a note verbal to Ambassador Huang, accompanied by photographic and video evidence of the incident, awaiting China's response. The incident in question occurred when China's Coast Guard reportedly employed water cannons to obstruct Philippine vessels carrying essential supplies, including food, water, and fuel to military personnel stationed at 2nd Thomas Shoal within the Spratly Island. Manila has criticized these actions, deeming them illegal, excessive, and dangerous. A senior Philippine official reaffirmed the nation's commitment to the 2nd Thomas Shoal, situated around 200 kilometers from Palawan Island, emphasizing that the Philippines will continue to assert its territorial rights. But the broader context of this dispute revolves around China's extensive territorial claims in the South China Sea, which encompass a crucial maritime route for global trade. Despite an international court ruling in 2016 that dismissed China's assertion as lacking legal basis, Beijing has continued the claims. Now, the World Health Organization, WHO, has raised concerns about a contaminated batch of common cold syrup called Cold Out, manufactured by an Indian company, Fertz Laboratory PVT Limited, for Dabili Pharma PVT Limited. The syrup obtained from Iraq was found to have higher than acceptable levels of contaminants, diethylene glycol and ethylene glycol, with 0.25% and 2.1% respectively, exceeding the safety limits of 0.10%. The manufacturer and marketer have not provided assurances of the product's safety and quality to the WHO. The cough syrups have also been linked to child deaths in Gambia and Uzbekistan, leading to regulatory actions and arrests. Reports have shown that many African students are having a tough time getting visas to study in the United States. The report looked at visa decisions from 2015 to 2022 and found that in 2015, more visa denials were happening in Africa except for South Africa. But now in 2022, the problem has spread to students from other places in the global south, except for a few countries. Although the U.S. has made some improvements in how it processes visas, the report still found that African students are 53% more likely to be denied a visa compared to students from other regions. Experts says visa denials shouldn't stop qualified students from studying in the U.S. and believes that quick changes to the rules and making things fair for African students is very important. And starting from 2024, the United Kingdom government plans to triple fines for employers and landlords who hire or rent to illegal migrants. The penalties for employers will be raised to £45,000 per illegal worker for a first breach and £60,000 for repeat breaches. Landlord fines will increase from £80 per lodger and £1,000 per occupier for a first breach to up to £5,000 per lodger and £10,000 per occupier. The government aims to discourage illegal working and renting, which they say supports the activities of human traffickers. Meanwhile, the UK government is also considering a proposal to send individuals who enter the country on small boats to a volcanic island in the South Atlantic. This idea, previously suggested in 2020 but deemed unworkable, has resurfaced as an option. Home Office Minister Sarah Dines indicated that the plan involving Ascension Island could be an alternative to the government's potential policy of deporting people to Rwanda, should the Rwanda plan prove unsuccessful. The legality of the Rwanda deportation policy was contested in court, with the High Court initially ruling it legal, though the Court of Appeal later deemed it not. And that's the morning news update for today. Thank you very much for watching. I am Olaoluwa Awe. Let's get back to the early exchange.
Thank you for staying tuned to Early Exchange on Souq News. And thank you, Olaoluwa, for that update. It's been a very busy 24 hours across the globe. And we'll just take a look at some of the headlines, some of the stories that made the headlines on this particular set. But I'm not alone, as always. I have by my left here Sam Orobuje, who is Director, Policy, Research and Development for Femi Watch Limited. Good morning, Sam.
A pleasure being here. Thank you, Ayo.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Okay, and of course, Olaoluwa,
Of course,
back here beside
I'm
me.
back here beside you.
All right, so let's start on a very cheery note. It was in the news that the Nigerian Air Force successfully rescued a total of 7 kidnapped victims in Kaduna State, and among them were 6 females who had been abducted from Niger State and 1 male individual. Now, this is cheery because we do know that we have battled as a people, as a country, with kidnapping issue for, as a people for quite a number of years now. We are lucky in this part of the world. I keep saying we don't have natural disasters as there are in other parts of the world, but then we are our own enemies, as the case appears. So if the Nigerian Air Force is saying they were able to successfully rescue 7 victims, it's a very welcome idea, and we can only hope that in the course of the months or the years going forward, more rescue operations will happen. We can only appeal to powers that be to do the needful and ensure that, okay, things get done the way they should be done so that we can breathe a sigh of relief. This is the level of inhumanity that man does to other men. But before I bring on Mr. Sam and the rest fully, because I have to go on a very short break, and when we come back, we'll do the analysis full blown. Stay tuned. Thank you for staying tuned to Early Exchange. Now we have an idea of what the day will look like from the standpoint of weather there. That was some weather updates across the country and across some other parts of the world. Okay, before we went to that particular short break, I was talking about the success recorded by the NAF, where 7 kidnapped victims were, rescued from the hands of their kidnappers. And I did say that it's a welcome development and something cheery in a nation where we have a lot of challenges we are battling with as a people, and other countries also have their own challenges. So every success has to be celebrated and talked about. Like I said earlier on, I have right beside me, fly by the left, Sam Rowuje. Good morning once again. Good morning, Sam.
Pleasure being here. Thank you.
And Onolua, who took the news much earlier, is right beside me.
Good morning. Good morning once again.
All right, I start with this. We know that the Nigerian military has always waged that war against kidnappers. Every day they are doing their best to ensure that we have a safe society and so that all of us can, function at optimal capacity. Now, this news is coming that 7 people were, rescued from the kidnappers' den. This is a positive development, the way I see it. What do you say to this?
We thank the military for the ability to rescue those kidnapped victims. But what is important is that the government needs to look at the overlapping drivers of conflict within the country, which include poverty. Those issues have to be addressed to reduce the impact of armed banditry and kidnapping. So it's a sharing news, but then the government should do more to tackle the overlapping drivers of conflict in Nigeria.
Yes, I would really like to, commend the efforts of the Nigerian Air Force and every other military institution combating insecurity in Nigeria. Personally, I really don't know why people would choose to go the way of kidnapping others. I really can't understand that psychologically, but we have these criminals out there looking for who to devour, looking for who to feast on, and we all need to be careful, especially in the northern part of the country. But then this rescue operation shows the superior power of our military might. It shows that they are there, they are working, they are doing their best, and we just need to continue to encourage them by ensuring that they have all they need to do what they must do. But also, just recently, the Inspector General of Police's team, as shared online by the Force PRO, that's the Force Public Relations Officer, Muyiwa Adejobi, they showed us a picture where they were coming the Lagos Ogun forests, to station different, to know where to station security officials to provide more security to that axis, because there have been reports recently that some kidnappers also have been trying to hibernate in those areas. So I think it's very important that we do more to secure our forests, we do more to secure areas that seem isolated, so that we can finally drive out these criminals from amidst us.
They talk about those places as ungoverned spaces. That's the language they use. Places where you really don't have enough supervision, or you don't have enough security forces. So it is cheery that the military and the Nigerian police are actually combing the forest, because if you can actually comb out the forest, there will be no hiding place for kidnappers. Okay, away from that, let's look at what happened yesterday at the floor of the Senate, the screening of the ministerial nominees. Enough drama yesterday. Of course, 45 out of the 48 nominees were cleared yesterday. 3 of them are yet to be cleared. One of which is Nasiru El Rufai,
the former governor of Kaduna State.
Yes, and but that was not the point of the major drama. The screening of Festus Keyamo took the floor, because you recall that in the last dispensation, when he was Minister of Labour and Productivity, he was called upon by the Senate to come and answer some questions, and he refused to come. So yesterday, he was right before them, and they took their pound of flesh. They said, this man did not show any respect to us as a lawmaking body. So why should we believe that he believes in the Nigerian project and he will abide by the laws?
Let me just add to that. They also grilled him on the 774,000 jobs. Remember that COVID-19 period, yes, where there was this 774,000 job initiatives for different local governments, across 1,000 job across all the local governments in Nigeria, which was directly under his supervision. So there was a little disagreement between his office and that of some of the lawmakers then, because they said, okay, let us be the ones to distribute these jobs to the people in our constituencies. But I think he didn't agree with them. So they now came at him yesterday saying, oh, the people from their constituencies didn't benefit from the project. So, and they grilled him.
So, Sam, would you see that as a kind of payback, vendetta? I mean, or was it just a fair screening process, the way you saw it?
We can look at it from two perspectives. What happened in the floor of the Senate yesterday was a welcome development, in my personal view.
A welcome development?
Yes, I think they drilled Festus Keyamo in respect of what had happened in the past. On the other hand, it was an opportunity to take a pound of flesh. But what is important is that Keyamo, as a junior minister in labor and productivity, was brought into the public limelight to account for some of his activities while he took charge of those direct labor that was distributed across the 774 local government in the country. So it was a wake-up call of accountability to some extent. But what happened thereafter, I didn't really see what they wanted to get at the end of the day, and I think they went into a closed session.
It took the intervention of the Senate President,
Yes, they went into a closed session, and I think
it became really very loud.
At the end of the day, they settled themselves.
Well,
but what is important
yes,
is that it's a call in some respect to accountability, and that's my personal view. In some way. On the other hand, it was an opportunity for the Senate or the National Assembly to lash back at Festus Keyamo of what happened when he was in charge of that direct labor initiative.
I hope the new ministers coming in will see this and really learn from this, because in the last administration, a good number of times, the senators will invite people. They've invited the CBN governor, and some of this, heads of ministry, agencies, and departments will refuse to come, and with little or no consequences.
Yeah,
so
I think just before we progress on that again bring the National Assembly to some extent, in my view, into disrepute, because when you invite people and they don't show up, what kind of moral integrity do you have on the other hand to be able to bring sanction to bear your oversight function? So this relationship, they need to rework it in such a way that their level of integrity in the public space is seen equally to be accounting on their own part. In the past, we have seen people in ministry and agency accusing them in terms of placing demand on them. To that extent, will you respect somebody who places some demand on you? A kind of
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. For me, I think the legislature, the executive arm of government, sometimes forgets the fact that there are checks and balances. Okay, you are not there. You can't judge your own performance. So we have three arms of government that, as we know them, and they are there to check one another. So when if you think, okay, the job is done and finished once you have been confirmed as a minister, days like this will come when you still need the approval of the Senate to get ahead in life, and they'll wait for you. So let us just, while we may say, okay, I agree with you, let the lawmakers, be more accountable, be more honorable. Let them play through to their names as honorable members of the assembly. But then the executive should also know that you don't disrespect lawmakers in any way. When they call you to come and answer questions, just go there. If you are there with clean hands, nothing will happen to you. We can't avoid some spotlights simply because we think, okay, they are not qualified to invite us. That's just what I see there before we move on.
Yes, I think I definitely agree with you on that, and I want to agree with Sam also that sometimes it's not just about saying some of these ministers didn't show up for Senate grilling or didn't, entertain their invitation. But the question is why? You also need to why, because there have been several things said here and there, but as you mentioned, the lawmakers should also try to be more honorable. But another thing is that the former governor of Kaduna State also, when his own screening happened, there was a little bit of a drama with some lawmakers trying to get back at him, for the insecurity that prevailed during his time in Kaduna State. But according to report, they are undergoing security clearance. And the question is, shouldn't this clearance shouldn't it have been done before their names were even penned down as part of the ministerial list? Because it took a while, for the president to submit a list in the first place. He submitted a list very close to the 60 days deadline. So what was going on around that period?
Okay.
Because that was a time for consultations, that was a time for security clearances and, checks here and there to ensure that these people that were submitting their names are, they are good to go, to an extent.
I would like to assume that the presidency or the president himself did his own, checks, his own background checks before he brought them on board. And by the way, he didn't bring on a stranger. All of them are known to him and known to everybody in Nigeria. Now, let's not forget the fact that appointments could be subject to manipulations if you release their names too early. You have no idea what a typical sitting president faces before he makes any appointment. The number of calls it will have, different interest groups here and there. So if people may not really have enough time to do their due diligence between the time of announcement of the nominees and the vetting period to answer you directly. Maybe that is why, okay, now that you have released the names, we didn't have enough time for us to do the vetting. We can now still do the vetting while we are doing the screening. So I think it is still in order, the way I see it.
I think why due diligence may have been made in the past, but sometimes petitions are written against certain people and new facts constantly emerge. To that extent, if they say they are still being investigated, I think that is in order because intelligence is a continuous, maybe new information emerge and people are trying to do due diligence on those facts before the final decisions are made. Those are my drift. We are not there, but I think those are some of the speculation that we can guess that could possibly happen.
I just hope there's no more to this than meets the eye, because at some point we even had some people's names withdrawn, replaced, and all of these things. But I just hope this is not just the politics of it all. Let's just hope for the best. I think we should hope for the best. Now let's get to the fact that the National Agency for Food, Drug Administration and Control, NAFDAC, has announced the official gazetting of the revised fat, oil and food contaminating fat and oil regulation 2022. But this new one they are bringing on board will ensure that consumers have all the information they need to have about their food. We see some of this, sometimes when you buy packaged food at the store, so you see the nutritional fact about the food. I guess this is to ensure that specific information about trans fatty acids will be supplied, just on that, added to the tables that you see, and so that consumers can have more information about what they are consuming. Because according to the World Health Organization, when you have industrially produced trans fatty acids from food supplies, it contributes to the reduction of non-communicable diseases all over the world. So I just hope that this would ensure that we have healthier foods, especially packaged foods. There have been concerns about the quantity and the quality of the packaged foods that we buy, the things that are used to preserve them, and if some of this information are actually really written down so that people can see clearly before they buy and know what they want to buy and what they don't want to buy. I think spelling this information out will also help these producers to reduce some of the unhealthy preservatives and items that they put in our foods.
Okay, for me, it's a two-way thing. Typing in the components of the packaged food is one part of the story. Will people read it? I recall that last week we had a story to that effect. How many Nigerians pick up packaged foods and read what is on the back, even if it is clearly written? That is one arm of it. Then, if you look at this particular press release or this news item, it sounds technical. What is trans fatty acid to an average Nigerian on the street? What message are we meant to get from this as an average consumer? I think information merchants have, they have a role also to play. Yes, they may give you, NAFDAC may give you these technical specifications. It is our duty essentially to, make it more explainable, much more easily understood by the populace, because the whole idea becomes lost if you don't have it's packaged in a way that people can easily read it. When you look at it, you say, okay, fatty acid. 0.5%. What is that to an average consumer on the street? So while we appreciate the fact that, okay, this gazetting has been done, it is important for those who even do the packaging of the labels to ensure that we communicate in a language that is easily understood. That's just my take on it. Sam?
Yes, I think in my view, what is important is that NAFDAC as a regulatory agency for food standards and safety, what is important is to ensure good manufacturer practice from the point of manufacturing, and the processes that bring about the final products are adhered to, in addition to nutritional facts and safeguards that are written in terms of the packaging. So what is important is to constantly ensure good manufacturer practices and ensure that those processes and the laid down procedures are adhered to by manufacturer. I think that's key for food safety and standard.
Yes, let's quickly get to updates on the coup in Niger Republic. And of course, the deadline given by ECOWAS for the Niger junta to, bring back the ousted president has elapsed. People are wondering what's going to happen. The President Bola Tinubu has met with the governors of states bordering Niger Republic because there have been concerns that if ECOWAS chooses to deploy military, to go the military way, how would that affect Nigerians living in Niger? How would that affect Nigerians living in the outskirts or the borders of Niger? And this has been the worry. And Niger also, at some point over the weekend, cut ties with Nigeria. We need to understand, what does that even mean? What's the level of our existing relationship with this country? This cutting of ties, who will it affect? Will it do us more harm than good in this situation?
Well, I know that it's on the lineup for today. We will discuss that particular topic and answer your question extensively. I know Sam is tempted to say something. You will have a whole 30 minutes to do this, but then we're out of time for this particular segment of the show. We're going on a very short break, and when we come back, we'll plunge into some other issues that we have lined up for the day. Until then, please don't go anywhere. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to Early Exchange on Souq News. Once again, I am Olaoluwa Awe, and Ayo Jimmy joins me here to have this conversation on the .ng domain. Well, this is Nigeria's code top-level domain. It is overseen by the Nigeria Internet Registration Association, called the NIRA. And the .ng domains are open to anyone regardless of their location. We're going to be talking about what's the point of the .ng domain compared to the .com, .uk, the .us, and the other dots we have all around the world. And that's what we want to talk about today.
Okay, so we have someone in the house, via Zoom, to join the conversation because it's a technical area and we need their expertise to shed light on the value of .ng domain and why we have few uptake as compared to other parts of the world. So we have standing by Busayo Balogun, Head Corporate Services, Nigerian Internet Registration Association, that is NIRA. Busayo, good morning to you.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, everyone.
Yeah,
I hope
morning.
you can hear me. It's
Yes,
nice to
we
be
can
here.
hear you. Thank you. Okay, it's been 16 years since we had the first board of NIRA, and then when the late engineer Ndukwe Kalu was, appointed to lead a 10-man board. But then, 16 years down the line, we have just over 260,000 .ng domain names that have been, taken up in Nigeria. But when you compare this to what has happened to .uk and .us, where they have over 10 million, you see that this is actually paling compared to them. So what are the factors that determine the uptake of a domain name like .ng? Let's start from there.
Okay, good morning. The network is not quite clear, but if I get your question, you're asking why the poor number in registration compared to other. Thank you so much. Thank you for that question. As we know, in Nigeria, based on the last population, the census, we are over 200 million Nigerians. And when you compare that to the current number of registered .ng domains, which stands over a little bit over 200,000, you would agree with me that that number is quite poor compared to the population. You ask, why is this so? I think it just has to do with us Nigerians. I think it has to do with the trust in the brand. A lot of us Nigerians don't want to be associated with anything .ng. They don't want to be seen as Nigerian. They don't want to be seen as local. So this has obviously affected the uptake of the .ng domains.
Now, let's talk about the
I don't know, can you hear me?
advantages. Let's talk about the advantages of using the .ng as
Hello?
against the other dots.
Hello? I'm so sorry, I can barely hear you.
Can you hear me now? Is it better now? Well,
You said, I'm so sorry, I really cannot hear you. I'm struggling to hear you.
Okay,
I
we're
can't
trying
hear
to sort that out, and we'll most likely get back to you. But let's talk about this .ng domain name. This is majorly for people that have websites, people that want to create their own website. A good number of times you see Nigerians, they create, for example, olaoluwa.com. A good number of Nigerians use the .com more than the .ng. We really need to know why it is important for them to use .ng, if it's important at all, especially for small businesses, because we have an increasing number of people that wants to host their websites because of the better internet penetration and the advantage of having a website.
Okay. When the essence of a thing is not known, abuse becomes inevitable.
Sure.
So they say.
Sure.
When you are playing in the local field called Nigeria, I use the word local basically in the context of local business. You rank more in Google search if you use a .ng and someone is looking for a local service provider, so to speak. Yes, most people don't want to associate with the Nigerian brand, as the case may be, but there's something called local brand relevance. You've got to build your own brand locally before you go out there. Now, apart from the fact that it gives you a level of acceptance on the local front, there is this enhanced trust and credibility when you have a .ng, because if you have a .ng domain name, it shows that you are a Nigerian brand. And at least within the confines of Nigeria as a geographical entity, you are recognized and you are trusted. That is that. Then, of course, you are able to comply with some local regulations. For instance, now, you cannot register a university domain name apart from using .ng. That will be .edu.ng. Are you getting my point? And because there are rules and regulations that guide this, so people don't really take up this .ng domain name, basically because they don't have an idea of what they stand to benefit. I don't know if Sam has any other thing to say about that before we
I think essentially when those domains were originally created, there was a pull factor to those other .com that was popular before we came on stream. I think that's one of the challenges. But having said that, it's important that people should recognize the .com that is associated with Nigeria for credibility and for national interest. So therefore, it's important that a high level of education must come up so that people can know the importance of registering with .com.ng, which is more like a local brand, which you alluded to earlier. So in terms of brand identity, those who are in charge of those management should up their game in terms of public education, awareness, and they keep benefit derivable for using local brands.
Yes, I hope we get Busayo back, because one of the things I wish to ask her is that is the .ng domain name relatively safer compared to the .com? And I'm being told now that she's now back with us. Welcome back, Busayo.
You said I'm back. Thank you. I heard the last speaker's contribution, and I must agree that, of course, we are doing a lot on our part to grow the brand awareness, the sensitization. We want Nigerians to know that the .ng is a critical resource. It is our identity online, and we're trying to encourage everyone to be patriotic, to get their .ng. I know the former speaker spoke about the .com, which is a generic top-level domain. They have the first mover advantage. The .coms have been here for a long time, and so that is why we see that a lot of people, when they want to register their website, they want to get a domain, they would usually go for that. That's the first mover advantage. But we are here to let Nigerians know, to let everyone know that we have the .ng. The .ng is there, is for everyone, is our resource, it is our identity, we should register, we should adopt the .ng. It has a lot of advantages. Like I earlier said, the .com has been here for years. They have the first mover advantage. Yes, I agree. But for the .ng, we noticed that a lot of people want to register their names, maybe their domain names. When they go on the .com generic top-level string, you see that the name is not available, considering the fact that these people have been there, the registrar. But when you come to the .ng, your preferred name is always available. You have the choice to even register like a busayo.ng, a souqnews.ng, which if you probably went to a .com, the chances of the name being available is very slim, So we also have other advantages of using the .ng. You also have the, SEO, the search engine optimization. Once you're registered with a .ng, once a Google search is conducted, online, your website will always rank first, because it is registered here in Nigeria. So yes, we're on our own. We're pushing, we're trying to do the awareness, we're trying to do the sensitization. We're not there yet, but we encourage every Nigerian, to get on board, register a .ng, be patriotic, buy the Naira, to grow the Naira, and just be proud, let's be patriotic, let's be proud of who we are.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Busayo. I had asked a question earlier when you were not here. Is using the .ng relatively safer in terms of engagement on your website compared to using the .com?
Oh, yes. So the same level of security that you get from a .com is what you get from the .ng. We've been here for over 10 years. We've never heard of any stories of, maybe .ng not being, on par, with the .com. Like I said, again, it's just because a lot of people are familiar with the .com because they have been here, they've been in existence for over, a lot of years. So people know they have the advantage, the first mover. But it's the same level of security that the .ng would also offer you as a .com.
Okay. Let me ask about the support facilities that .ng probably has for customers who take up the name. Because when you use the .coms and the .uk's of this world, there's a measure of technical support that comes with it. How robust is our own technical support when you use .ng as a domain name?
Oh, yes. So we have the technical infrastructure. We have the support there on that, because the way the .ng domain names are registered, we have registrars. We have accredited registrars that have gone through a process, registrars that we've tested. So, the companies are there to provide you, the services you need, the technical support. We are online. The registry is also there. NIRA is the registry. So we're always there to offer whatever support that is needed that the registrants and the registrars need. Unlike when you register a .com domain, for instance, sometimes most of these registrants, and when I mean the registrants, I'm talking about the end users, if they run into issues, they have challenges, most times, most of them do not know who to run to. They don't know who to go to. But with the .ng domain, NIRA is here, the registry is there. You can always reach out to the registry. You can always contact us, be it if you have any issues with any registrar as regards maybe your domain names or transferring the domain names, whatever issue, we are here. The technical support and assistance that we provide is here because we are here, we are on ground, you know where to reach us.
Yes, let's talk about more comparison between the .ng and the .com. And one of the major reasons why some people go for the .com is because they want to be globally visible. They believe that with the .coms, an average person in the US, in the UK, and all around the world will be able to relate with their websites. But do we have the same level of visibility with the .ng?
Oh, yes, you can always get the same. Like I said, there's really no difference. .ng is a country code top level domain. Every country, the Kenya, South Africa, everyone has their 2-character, identity in the internet. For Kenya, it's .ke. For South Africa, you have .co.za, and these are all recognized, names, just like .ng. Like I said again, it's just because Nigerians don't like to be associated with something local. They see the .ng as something that is local. They don't want to align themselves with that brand. So the same thing, the same visibility that you will get using a .com is the same visibility you get using a .ng. I spoke about the SEO search before. One of the advantages, you register your domain with a .ng, you conduct a Google search, your website is going to rank first, because you are registered there, you're based there. So your search, people would see that company pop up first. So yes, it still offers the same, advantages as the .com. But like I said, the .com has been here for a longer time. So I think a lot of people are just more comfortable with the brand, and we hope that the .ng will get there soon. Nigerians will be able to associate and be proud actually to be associated with the identity online.
Okay. Yeah, let's look at the ease of registering a .ng and even the cost implication of doing this. Some people argue that part of why you have a low uptake of the .ng is the fact that some paper documentations create some kind of bottlenecks for them, and that it is relatively more expensive registering a .ng in some instances than registering a .com. How true is this?
Thank you so much. Thank you for that question. Well, maybe before now, the .ng might have been perceived as expensive, but last year, just recently last year, the prices of .ng domains were slashed, by over 50%. And I can tell you that we have a domain, a .ng domain that's cost as low as 400 naira, So when you're actually doing like a cost comparison, I think the .ng is actually cheaper. And please, again, know that when you're paying for your .ng domain, you pay for it in naira. Unlike when you go for a .com, you're paying for it in US dollars, which obviously that is also leading to capital flights outside of the country. But for your .ng domains, the ease of registering it is so easy. We have registrars. All you need to do is to go on their platform, select your registrar, put in the name, and if the name is available, it's just a seamless process. Now, for some other domains that people say, oh, you need some documentations, those are the domains that we refer to as closed domains. And these are domains that are actually reserved for certain institutions and parastatals. For instance, we have the .gov.ng, which I think you must be familiar with, because most of the MDAs, the ministry, departments, and state agencies of government use the .gov.ng. So clearly, if you want to go on that strings, there are some documentations that are required. Or for instance, maybe for the higher institutions, you have the .edu.ng, you need to provide, additional documentation for you to go on that string. But for your normal .com.ng and the other strings, the registration process is simple and seamless. You don't need any documents. You just probably need to fill the forms. You go on the registrar's, website, and then they will do, and under 5-10 minutes, you should have your domain name registered, your .ng domain name registered.
You explained this documentation for second level domains, and why is it very important for those documentations to be done?
Yes, thank you so much. So like I said, there are some second level domains that are actually for certain institutions and organizations. The .gov.ng domains is for government parastatals, So if you notice, you have the firs.gov.ng. This domain, this particular SLD, is reserved for certain institutions. Like the .gov.ng is for government parastatals. The .edu.ng is for higher institutions, higher institutions that have been accredited by the relevant bodies. So it's not all the SLDs, it's just specific SLDs, which we refer to as closed, because again, you need to provide documentation for you to be able to register on that SLD.
But the question is why? Why the process? Is it so that you can verify those institutions as legit? Is it for security reasons? We need to understand the rationale behind that.
Yes, thank you so much. So it's for policy reasons, because if you're coming on board as like a higher institution, we need to be sure that you have obtained the necessary accreditation, from the body in charge, I think NUC. So we need to provide this extra level, of security. We need to be sure that the entity that is coming on board on that SLD is who or what they say they are. So yes, from the policy reasons, that is a way of keeping, providing like an extra layer of security and just ensuring that you keep the cyberspace, secure and free, and everyone coming on the .ng string, we know who they are and actually can verify that this is who they say they are.
All right, Busao, please hold on there. Let me ask a policy-related question. I will ask someone in-house here for that question. Sam, you speak to policy issues in Nigeria, and you heard there that there is low uptake of .ng, basically because Nigerians don't want to take it up, they don't believe in it. What policy measures can we, latch on to encourage uptake of .ng?
I think the policy framework is already there. She spoke to that earlier. What is important is to upscale the level of education in terms of increasing the uptake. On the other hand, then the cybersecurity framework must equally be added, and more education should be created in those arena to be able to sustain the uptake in terms of usage. And like you said earlier, we need to improve on our national brand identity by consuming what is Nigerian, for us to be able to sustain our economic growth, reduce foreign exchange expense, which normally affects the way we do business. But I know the policy framework is there, so we need to upscale the level of education and public enlightenment, as mentioned earlier.
So back to you, Busayo. Let's talk more about security. You mentioned the documents that needs to be submitted for, the closed domains. But let's talk about the ones that are easy to access. Are there also levels of security to ensure that, there are phishing sites and all kinds of scammers out there, lashing onto these things? What are the security measures you have put in place there?
Thank you so much. With SAFE, we have policies. Like I said, the registry is here. NERA is the registry, so we're here. So once we receive, from time to time, we receive complaints. Complaints can come in various forms, can be domain name, can be cyber, but we're here, most times we would usually, interfere to see how we can resolve, this conflict. So yes, the registry is available. We provide the services. We wade in when there's a dispute. We have policies that actually, deal with the way that disputes are handled with the .ng domain names. So yes, the infrastructure and the security is there.
Well,
Okay. Let's look at the need for you to stay loyal to your domain name, I mean to your country top domain name, and global visibility. Of course, some companies want to identify with other domain names in some other countries where they have presence. Like if I have a branch in South Africa, I probably want to have a .co.za, and I have another one in Ghana under a different domain name. How do companies balance the need for local loyalty to the domain name that is .ng and the need for global presence all over the world?
Thank you. In my opinion, I don't think having a .ng domain actually would prevent you from being seen as global. I think for me, it's just a stamp, an extra stamp, because they can tell that, oh, this business is real, this business is genuine. We can see that, they are registered in Nigeria. So I think for me, it's the other way around. It doesn't affect a company. We have companies that can also decide to go down that route of adopting the country code of every country that they have business in. But you having a .ng does not prevent you, from carrying out business in all these other countries.
now let's talk about the process of even registering under the .ng for people who are new to these things. What are the step-by-step processes for this?
Thank you so much. So like I said, because of the model that we operate in NERA, we do not actually carry out the domain name registrations ourselves. We have trusted partners, which we call the accredited registrars. So if, for example, you want to register a domain name today, we have over 100 registrars, both here in Nigeria and outside the country, and then you just need to go visit their platform, their websites, and then the steps to follow is so easy because everything is done online. So you put in the name you want to register. If it's available, you provide, the information they need, and then your domain name is registered. So it's as simple as ABC.
Okay.
Very simple.
For the likes of .com, .net, and what have you, there is the problem of cyber squatting, where some people take up some domain names before you even get there. Don't be too surprised. Your name might have been taken up by someone else. Does the .ng domain name have the same issue of cyber squatting, or is not that popular yet to suffer that fate?
Thank you so much. Thank you for that question. So like I said, the .ng, the registry, we really do not encourage domain name squatting. So we've had instances where we've had people register other people's brand names, their trademarks, and then when they come to us, the registry, we have a way of resolving these issues fast, quick, because again, we have a policy in place to address these issues. So you usually would not find a domain name squatter, here, because it is highly discouraged. And then we know, because we have policies, we know that domain name registration is on a first come, first served basis. But when we have, compelling situations, when we have like a trademark owner coming, with proof that this is his brand, and, these domain names are released, to this owner. So there's no question of, oh, someone is trying to hold me to ransom with my domain. I have this. No, it's not. We don't have that issue. And even when we have the policy framework in place to deal with such issues.
Okay, now let's talk about availability. It is perceived by some people that once you register on that .ng, or the names that you can register with the .ng are limited. Because it tends to focus more on maybe Nigerian names or so. They believe that if you want to have more options in terms of name registration, you need to go for other global domain names. Do you agree with this?
No, I actually think it's the other way around. Like I said, I think the names you want to register, you can register any name under the .ng band, I even think you have more names that are available because, like you said, compared to, we just have over 200,000 registrations and the .com, they have millions. So I think, in my own opinion, if you actually want a name, you can actually find it. It's easier to find it on the .ng string than on the .com because .com has been there for years. Trust me, lots, of domain name registrations take place. So it's possible, highly possible that that name that you want, might not even be available. But you come to the .ng, the chances, of it being available is so high. It's so
So
high. So I
apart
think
from
it's actually
the personal reasons or the personal need for Nigerians to use the .ng, are there, other collective advantages? Is the government making more money? Is it boosting our economy one way or the other? Is registering
it's
the
boosting
.ng
because, like
domain
I
name
said,
giving us
when you
more
buy a
jobs?
.com, capital flights, you're taking the dollars, you're taking dollars out. But when you buy the .ng, you pay for it in naira. I can still remember when we had, the crunch, the dollar, the request for dollar when it was so tight. A lot of the domain name, the website owners, they couldn't renew their domain names, their .com domain names because of the stress, because of the difficulties, in obtaining the dollars. But for the .ng, and then we saw a spike because a lot of people decided to reflect inwards and say, oh, but we have a .ng and we can pay for naira, and then it's even more cheaper, it's more cost effective. So why not, So I think for us, spending in naira here, obviously you're growing the economy. You're growing the economy. So in one way or the other, it contributes to the economic growth of the country.
Okay, there have been instances where people fail to, renew their domain name after expiration. What's the timeline, the window you have to still, re-register? I know that with some other platforms, maybe 2 months, 3 months, warnings come to you, and if you don't do it, then it becomes available for any other person to buy. With the .ng, what's the window of grace that you have?
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for asking. We also have that same number of grace period. We have over 188 days, before the domain name actually goes back to the pool and is available for anyone to register. So yes, we also have that. It's also available under the .ng. We have that grace period over 100 or close to 188 days, 80 days, before the domain name is actually thrown open and is taken back into the pool for anyone
Lastly,
to
for you,
register.
Busayo Balogun, this morning, as at now, we have about 260, registered
Thousands.
under the 260,000 registrations under the .ng. What is your target, your goal for another 1 year? How do you want to increase this?
Thank you so much. So currently, we're also working at the registry. We're looking at strategic partnerships. Right now, we have one that is ongoing with the Corporate Affairs Commission. We are in talks with them to see how, we can provide a free domain name and, website hosting designed for like a year for every new business that is registered. So that's something we are working on to see how we can grow the numbers. Discussions are ongoing. We're dotting the T's and we're dotting the I's. We are hoping that this would materialize, before the year runs out, and then we can see an increase in the uptake of .ng domain names. We're also looking to partner with other strategic, stakeholders to see how we can push, the brand awareness and sensitize, Nigerians that there is a .ng, and then, for everyone to come on board. So yes, we are working on key, partnerships. They're in the works, and we're hoping that before the year runs out, we're able to announce this, and that everyone knows that we're also working here. We're trying to.
It's good to know that you are planning to give out 1 year free web design, facility for those who, who register with you.
Are we the first to know that? Are we the first
We're not the
to
first
know
to know
that?
that. I should actually ask you to pay for that, but then maybe as against pay, we'll probably give you a bunch of domain names we want to register, so we can have that free web service. All right, thank you very much. It's been fun talking to Busayo Balogun, Head of Corporate Services of NAIRA, and we have taken a look at the .ng implication for businesses and why we should believe in it, because because it is a Project Nigerian. Thank you once again for being part of this show. We take a very short break now, and when we come back, we still talk tech. Don't go anywhere.
Now, policies are designed to fix issues. And these issues have been identified through needs that have shown themselves up in the society that are begging for solution. And the most strategic way of fixing these needs, of getting these policies accepted and entrenched, is data generation, statistics generation to back it up. Now, our question is, how do you encourage evidence-based idea generation? Now, we encourage it by, first of all, looking at the advantages that the policy is intended to impact. Now, idea generation is already a basic thing, right? But then how do you make people want to go out there to do it, thereby ensuring that the policy they are putting in place is clearly, strategically put in place, is accepted, everybody runs with it, and thereby giving it a better chance of being a success? The first point that we had mentioned, looking at the advantages that our policy is intended to impact. The second is looking at the long-term strategic implications of that policy. Once you look at it and it makes sense, makes positive sense to everyone, and at the end of the day, our livelihood will be bettered for it, the country will run better for it, it'll be easier to encourage one to generate ideas to back it up, to ensure that it actually passes being approved, implemented, and above it all, its success rate is very high. There's no point going through the process of putting policies in place that do not succeed, or that at the end of the day causes more problems than intended to solve. Our third point is stakeholder engagement, to fund out the usefulness and get their absolute buy-in. Once you have done the groundwork or the legwork, and your stakeholders are all brought on board, they see the usefulness of that policy, it will definitely ginger them to generate evidence, whereby idea generation will be very easy. You would have enough statistics data to back up and justify the creation and implementation of those policies. The fourth is discipline in data and statistics generation. It doesn't just happen. It's not by happen chance. If you need something done, you need to be disciplined, you need to be strategic, you need to be intentional about it. Our fifth point is funding R&D into the policy direction. Now, oftentimes we try to reinvent the wheel. You need something done, you go out there and check how someone else is doing that in another country, whereas we could actually be, but don't forget, our problems are local. So our solutions should actually be local grown. So we need to strategically fund R&D into developing what we need done. Through that, we will generate the data. Clearly, we will generate evidence for it, for the idea generation that will back it up. It will make implementing our policy easier, make acceptance easier, make also the output from that policy easier. The fifth is it will strengthen the implementation of the policy. Once there's evidence-based, it clearly shows that there's a need. The need is being addressed. Thereby, implementation will be very easy. We won't struggle to implement that policy because everybody wants it, because they've all been bought over to it and to its usefulness. And the sixth point is that when we do a post-policy review, so wherever we are, something has happened to get us to that point of trying to implement that policy. When we look back at where we're coming from, there must have been a problem begging to be fixed. So when we do a past policy review and we do an M&E, a forward-looking M&E, thereby avoiding the pitfalls that past policy had, we would clearly generate enough evidence. We would encourage evidence-based idea generation to ensure that that policy, it passes, it's accepted, it's a great success, and at the end of the day, net, we are better for it. Thank you very much.
The launch of the GSM services in Nigeria started, as far back as 22 years ago. And since then, it's been a journey of innovation, growth, and challenges. I think this all started in May 16, 2001, when the then CEO of Econet, Strive Musiwa, launched a call through to the then President Olusegun Obasanjo. And this call was made from the Maritime House in Apapa, Lagos. Quite interesting.
Very, very interesting. It was a moment of brilliance and a lot of optimism for Nigeria as a country. Then, on a day like this, August 8, 2001, Econet Wireless launched the first GSM operation in Nigeria. I know that it's been debated by some people that, okay, maybe MTN started, but history has it that Econet Wireless was the first GSM service provider to be registered or licensed in Nigeria. They launched on the 8th of August 2001. So it's been 22 years today, and we're taking a look at the evolution of GSM services in Nigeria from those days of Nokia 310 and the Sir James of this world. Maybe you want to talk about your first phone also back then, Sam.
I think it's Nokia 3310.
3310. Popular, yeah.
Mine was 3310.
Okay, I had the Sir James then. Sir James with horn, and you branded the horn like this. Okay, so we're taking a look at the evolution of this particular innovation in Nigeria, which democratized telephony for a lot of people in Nigeria. Before then, only a few houses had maybe the phone services.
I remember the wire telephone.
Yes, in my neighborhood, our landlord was the only one who had it. My parents were in the east and I was here in the southwest. So for my mom to talk to me, it would take 3 weeks of announcement. Please help me tell Ayo that on the 25th of August, I'll be calling him. And that day, I must stay at home, stay by the phone all through. Not going anywhere until that phone. And you need to, maybe these Gen Zs need to know what it was like then. You would dial, you would turn circle.
I don't even know how to operate that thing. But the ability to put call through to someone and receive calls from people really changed the business, changed the economy as a whole. And I remember then these phone services were really expensive. To get a phone, the 310 we're talking about, to register a SIM, things are different now, and we definitely need to talk about how far we have come.
Let's allow Sam share some memories with us, because I remember the first SIM cards that came that time were in thousands. 35,000, 40,000, 70 for some people. Some people were like, okay, if you could just ask a girl out by brandishing a SIM card, not a phone. Yes, what was it like for
you? It's good to go through the memory lane. I remember the first phone that I had, which incidentally was Econet. I bought through a cooperative savings.
Wow.
You had to get
you had to save towards it.
Yeah, I had to save towards it, and I got some money through the cooperative to be able to buy that service. But we thank God that the journey has been so good, business has been enabled, social networks have, interactions have improved. And I think in spite of the challenges of network failure once in a while, telephony has brought a lot of development to Nigeria in the last 22 years.
Honestly speaking, apart from the fact that we could communicate easily on a one-on-one basis through telephony, it has helped businesses. Young ones can't imagine a world without phone. They will ask you, how did you live your life without phone? But then let's leave personal space now. Let's come to the business space now. How has telephony, GSM evolution, help businesses? Maybe your own take on that.
Well, it has really helped the creation of jobs, I really must say, because there were since we started having GSM services, there were some other, additional businesses that now had to come up. For example, those who would, buy the phones, register the SIM, and allow people to come make calls at their shops or their stores for an amount of money. Of course, you can imagine how much people made from selling recharge cards in Nigeria. People, in fact, it became a whole line of work. People started getting these umbrellas, getting tables and chairs. They started creating space. They ran it as a whole line of business, and people made a whole lot of money. I know that is as phased out now, or is phasing out, but a lot of people made ends meet through that. But there were also people that printed these recharge cards. I mean, in
the vouchers.
The vouchers. You know, they made a lot of money. I remember back then when I was still working in the radio station, there were even people who made a lot of money from training people to do these things. Yes, so it has really boosted the economy. It has improved communication and connectivity between businesses and even individuals. You can imagine back then, for you to see, maybe you want to partner with an organization, or for you to even launch communication, you have to travel from Lagos to Abuja. Something you can now do over the phone. It doesn't mean that people still don't travel to do business, but you know, it has even reduce the stress businesses need to go through just to communicate and relate with people. Now you can stay in your house and tell somebody from work that you won't be able to come in because you're not feeling well and all of that.
All right, let's look at it from the development standpoint. We'll talk about business and we'll come back to that really. You are a developing expert. How has the advent and the evolution of GSM in Nigeria boosted development across board, beyond just businesses?
I think the phone, again, is an enabler. It has improved businesses. In terms of development, the phone too has increased the learning processes. You're able to learn virtually. Those are some of the advantages in terms of the development imperative that the phone has brought about. So by and large, I think in terms of the development ecosystem, telephony has enabled learning and development. It has increases virtual learning, even the classroom development, particularly the post-COVID era. Phone has become a facilitator for learning. Therefore, it has increased the level of development. It has increased virtual learning and the likes. So therefore, telephony has been very good for development.
Well, let me quickly speak to that. You know, an idea came to my mind right now. Do you know, this has even changed, it has contributed to the evolution of man. You know, as at when GSM services were introduced to the country, it took the sharpest people to be able to operate even the 3310. You know, it took the educated ones, you know, it took it took the elderly ones to be able to handle, you know, some of the things that needed to be done. Well, now we are living in a world where a 2-year-old boy or girl can operate an Android. Mentally, we have changed, we have evolved. We are now more intelligent. Don't you agree with that?
There's a joke out there that a typical baby today is born with phone in his hand. Essentially. Well, that may be just, you know, metaphorical, but it goes to show that they come with that telephony instinct because they are born into the advent of, you know, of phone. Now, let's not forget the fact that with the advent of GSM, we have data. We move from voice call to, you know, data call. We'll talk about that, but we have our guest waiting via Zoom. We have with us the NCC Director of Public Affairs, Mr. Ruben Moka. Good morning, Mr. Ruben, if you can hear me.
Good morning to you, anchors of this early morning program.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right. From the early days of just 400,000 telephone lines 22 years ago, we have over 222 million lines now. And now, you being an expert, can you just make a comparison, telephony then, now, and in the future? Nigeria as a case study.
Well, excuse me. Well, it's like coming from the dark to the bright and to the brighter. You know how it was in those days before 2001, when all we have is a monopoly operator who was able at that time to deliver less than 500,000 lines for a huge population of more than 150 million then. And of course, it was 2001 that the revolution came in. And since then till now, a lot of things have happened to increase connectivity. And by the way, we usually don't say GSM because a lot of people think it's all about GSM. GSM is a technology, one of the mobile technologies. We are technology neutral in the Nigerian Communications Commission. So we can take it that it's a mobile digital communication that actually or digital mobile communication that actually uplifted Nigeria from those dark ages or dark waters of telecommunications connectivity to what you have today. I mean, you have explained it. It wasn't possible to be on Zoom by the side corner of your village or your house to have meetings with a lot of people from across the world. You were not able to do a lot of financial transactions you can do at the comfort of your desk. Just a whole lot. And now, almost like I heard you mention, even phone, everybody has access to phone services across the country. So it has been a major revolution, we must still call it, because right now it is one infrastructure, if you like, that Nigeria ranks with any other the country of the world in terms of access to citizens to be able to connect and do all the things that telecommunications brings about. And of course, we have also launched the 5G technology, which is the 5th generation mobile technology, which is now becoming available. That is the latest mobile technology across available in any part of the world, and Nigeria has access to it. And that tells you that the future is even brighter because we are keeping pace with technology. Excuse me. We are keeping pace with technology, we are keeping pace with service, we are keeping pace with affordability, and even quality of services that individuals can enjoy, individuals and corporates, because what it has become is infrastructure of infrastructures, because no part of the economy is not dependent on telecommunications in this country and in any part of the world, actually. So, so that is how it has been. I think it has made Nigeria, there is really no place now you can call a village or locality that is not connected. If it's not connected by infrastructure, fiber optics, it's connected by microwave systems, or it's connected by satellite, because you know about the latest satellite technology provided by SpaceX, actually called Starlink in Nigeria, which also uses satellites to cover almost every location in Nigeria. So it is total coverage, if you like, although you still have some access gap, which is by way of building infrastructures that link everywhere. But technology has afforded Nigeria to just be in the forefront of technological or telecommunications evolution in the world.
Thank you very much. You know, one thing I liked about what you said, sir, and that I can confirm is that when it comes to communication technology, there's hardly nothing you find in the saner climes that you don't also find in Nigeria, almost as quickly as possible.
Right.
But let's talk about competition
Right.
and innovation in the GSM provider sector in Nigeria. How has the NCC been able to encourage different businesses to come on board, and how has this competition enhanced the improvement of the service quality in Nigeria within these 22 years?
Well, you know that it took a bit of house clearing or nation clearing or a bit of sanity to be created in the telecommunications industry in Nigeria, because before big companies, some outside of Nigeria, some locally, we had the confidence to, invest. Of course, you know that at that time the basic for licensing was $100 million before they got up to, if I remember correctly, 285 for each of the service providers before they got the licenses. So, and in this industry, because of the nature, because if you remember, we were thinking about how if they can deliver initially 120,000 lines across the country, something like that, but they came and started deploying lines that offered millions of lines. So it's an industry that requires a lot of investment before you realize that number. So that also improved the competitive atmosphere because the operators, each of them was doubling efforts to ensure, because the market was there, and each of them were, doubling efforts to deploy these lines to most people. People were hungry, and if you remember, the SIM cards at that time were even, I think the first set of SIM cards in this country were 20,000 naira. At that time, you know what 20,000 naira was worth. And right now, it's almost free in all. So this is the driver. I mean, the competition is the driver of the improvement and investment, because you can't afford to lag behind when there is fertile market, when there are people to uptake the services, and when you have to make money. But essentially, you have to invest hugely. So the operators have invested, but most importantly, the issue was about a stable regulatory atmosphere, a predictable regulatory environment, which gives the operators the confidence. So NCC, for instance, came with a stable regulatory environment, which pushed up that competitive atmosphere, and which, of course, encouraged people to invest. And since then, we have gone to invest more, not only in just mobile communications, but in infrastructure provision, a whole lot of things that encourage competitors or operators, and also ensure that they have return on investment. And in telecommunications environment, the more you invest, the more the quality improves. You remember when we started, you could see the number of base stations across the country were just few, and the quality of services were not as good as it has become today. There was a time when quality of service was an issue, serious issue across the country. But today, I think to a large extent, the quality has improved, and because the infrastructure that the operators have invested have become huge. And in terms of infrastructure provision, it's no longer the mobile operators that provide all. You see that we have even operators that operate in different markets, like co-location providers, which provide infrastructure upon which the service providers use. And of course, some that are investing in cable, fiber optics, connectivity across the country. So it's a combination of competition and quality regulation that results in improved services in terms of quality, in terms of access, in terms of affordability. So I could see that it has we have come a long way improvement in all
right,
sectors,
sir.
and
Okay.
the service providers are
let me
also
move on, sir,
happy.
to another question. Now, talking about the service providers, I would agree with you that there is a notable improvement in the quality of service. But then these providers face some challenges. Multiple taxation is one of the challenges, and vandalism of their infrastructure, telecoms infrastructure, is another. As a regulatory body, what are you doing to ensure that these things are kept at bay, so that telecoms infrastructure are not vandalized and they don't suffer from multiple taxation? What are the regulatory oversight functions that you as a body are performing?
We have quite a number of them. We have done a lot of engagement. We believe in a lot of collaboration with the agencies of government, with communities, and a whole lot of them. If you remember, we have been engaging the National Economic Council to, one of the key things there was to, reduce the cost of laying infrastructure, to give linear meter cost of laying fiber across the roads and across the communities, so that we have uniform situation where, because right now, still a lot of state governments and different government agencies do not allow service providers to, put down infrastructure. So basically, that is the issue of right of way. We are engaging the governors forum to try to engage with them to understand that the infrastructure for telecommunications are basically economics. It's not how to realize a lot of money there. because a lot of the people think that taxing or giving fines and giving multiple taxation and regulation to the service providers will yield more money to them. So we are trying to engage them. A lot of enlightenment is going on with the communities, with the agencies of government in that direction. Right-of-way issues also, because we have tried to engage even the service providers to understand the circumstances. And of course, recently we just had a roundtable with the academia, because part of the problem also is something like power. You know, Nigeria is not blessed with quality power availability, and the service providers are, having a lot of challenges with supply of diesel and generators to power the services. So what we do is more like engagement, encouragement, and if possible, because there are places we make attempts to see if they can, for instance, when we're having different exchange rates availability, approaching the financial institution regulators to find a way to ease the burden for service providers so that they will have access to foreign exchange, because you know that this service is dependent on a lot of foreign exchange to import equipment and all that. So those are the ways, understanding the environment and trying to educate the actors in the various segments to give opportunity for telecommunications infrastructure to thrive and for the service providers to have a good environment to operate.
Thank you very much, sir. I understand that a lot has happened structurally. A lot has changed structurally 22 years ago compared to now. Could you please throw more light into the different categories and value chain of services within the telecom sector in Nigeria so that we can adequately appreciate these service providers that have come up over the years?
Okay, all right. You see, as technology changes, even the structure of services, even the demand by the consumers continue to change. If you remember, when we started with, well, you can call it the second generation, when we had the first set of mobile services, the digital mobile services, I mean, from 2001, you could only do text messages. From that basic text messages, we have graduated to third generation, fourth generation, and fifth generation. And we, apart from now, text messages, SMS, we can now do USSD, which means even in small structure of sending data across, sending messages across, you can engage online because USSD is online at all times. So that is just from the basic. But you know, in the beginning, it was all about access. We were trying to see that people can make calls and receive calls. So that became very important. But as we graduate, emphasis reduced from availability, but also dimensions of services. As we graduate with the mobile communications, we begin to see various aspects of telecommunications. We begin to see internet services. We begin to see even up to broadband connectivity. You talk about fintech. We start with basics of you can go to ATM and withdraw money because of the connectivity of telecommunications to those service centers, because a lot of people didn't even know what powers something like ATM is telecommunications. Now we have graduated from that. You remember when you have to go to the bank to be able to do basic transactions. Today, it is totally different. The banks are in business of now seeing how people can easily do all manners of transaction at the punch of a button. So, and now we are now talking about broadband. We have up to 48% penetration of broadband. With broadband availability, everything under the sun is available, is possible in terms of connectivity. And as I mentioned, that is why we're able to do Zoom today. And if you remember the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, you begin to see it was no longer voice and just data. It is also disruptive technologies like the WhatsApp, the Instagram. Today, social media has overtaken the space. So it was no longer internet. We have grown to broadband services, grown to social media. In fact, the whole gamut of digital services have become easy. So the industry has grown from when voice was very critical, but it has come to a stage where data and broadband connectivity has become
Yes.
the major.
I accept that. So let me puncture it at that broadband connectivity region. Now let's go to 5G. We know that 5G has changed the way we experience internet access or mobile communication, as the case may be. But for a lot of people, 5G is still some kind of mystery. A lot of misinformation came at the introduction of 5G. People talked about perceived health implications, hazards, and so on and so forth. Could you please clear the air? Does 5G really harm human beings, or is it just a fad?
Well, it was for those in the telecoms industry, it sounded very funny because it came with the conspiracy theories that were witnessed during a situation like the COVID. And a lot of people, were misinformed, even to the point of foolery. I think somebody was giving an example of when street lights came to even a place like UK, and the people were wondering that God created night and day. Night is for darkness, the day is for light. Then certain people now put lights in the street, that there was no difference between night and day. And they were like opposing that, that step. So it was like the same thing for 5G. The mobile telecommunication system started from 1G to 2G. 1G was the analog type, which we had here in Nigeria before 2001. Then we have 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G. As we advance in those systems, there is always improvement in the quality and capacity of services. With 5G, you can now do video, voice, data exchange simultaneously at a speed of a split second. So the global telecommunications regulators have set these standards. And after 5G, we are going to have 6G, 7G, and it continues like that as improvements go on. By 2030, 6G might be knocking on the door, even before then. So it was a misinformation by conspiracy theorists who think they can frighten, they leveraged the COVID-19 pandemic to frighten human beings, and a lot of people were taken for it. Before 2019, a lot of countries have launched 5G, and it doesn't look like Nigerians, or as they say it here, it looks like our lives are not more important than those of those foreign countries or developed world that have launched it. Everybody is afraid of his life. Everybody wants his life. So 5G is only improvement in communications, has nothing to do with those things they mentioned. They are just misinformation, and people should discountenance all those.
Yes, before we go on a short break, sir, let me quickly take you back to a question I asked earlier when I talked about the structural development that has happened within the telecom sector in Nigeria. Could you mention the new businesses that have evolved? Because with technologies like this, some businesses fade away, some new businesses come into place, and because when people talk about internet, or when you talk about data, now you probably only think about some of these Econet, you think about MTN, but there are a good number of other businesses supplying support services. So could you please mention them so that we can appreciate the work they do?
Okay, well, for instance, we have co-location providers who are the people that now build infrastructure. They construct base stations, put light there, put everything there. The service providers can now come to connect. We have virtual mobile license operators. These are a set of new licenses that are growing in the industry, where people can distribute services from the mobile service providers. They can distribute services to to consumers in various forms. Some of them, corporate organizations, some to schools and things like that. So we have them. We have people that are still doing cable services in terms of fiber optics, people that are doing cabling of communities, community-based services. They link individuals, communities, and homes through virtual services or through fiber optic links, delivering mobile services to homes and communities.
Okay.
I know that if you come to retail, you know that a lot of businesses have grown out of marketing telecommunications devices. Now you have telecommunication devices that are can do a lot of things. The mobile market, the mobile device market is very, very, very huge, that it's transformed the business landscape of telecommunications services.
All right, thank
so
you,
that
sir.
to me, that's the view I could get now.
Let me allow you to take a breather. Let's go on a very short break. And when we come back, we want to talk to a recent issue that was discussed at the level of NCC, which is the warning you gave about those who are still selling non-type telecoms devices and some other issues about consumer protection. But then, a short break first. And please stay tuned. We'll be back. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We shouldn't leave the child to only one parent to bring up, whether it's the mother or the father. The child needs both parents. I want to talk about fathers because I made a post given that Father's Day just passed. In the post, I said that fathers are the unsung heroes in our lives. And a lady who saw the post asked me why I was admitting that fathers are unsung heroes. Why wouldn't they come forward to be recognized and to be celebrated as heroes in our lives? So I asked her what exactly she meant by that. And her response jolted me. And she said, fathers just content with paying fees, providing upkeep money, but very absent in the lives of their children. So I asked her, what could we do to be more present? And she gave very few suggestions. For instance, taking your child to school once a week. And in that ride, there's so much you share with your child that helps you to bond and to understand that child better. Prioritizing your child on their important milestones, because those milestones don't come twice. Being there when they need you, for instance, advice about their first job. We shouldn't leave the child to only one parent to bring up, whether it's the mother or the father. The child needs both parents. It needs different things from each of the parents. So fathers, please let us not be the unsung heroes in our children's lives. Let us come forward and also be celebrated as heroes in our children's lives.
As the world continues to grow its technological capabilities, advancing and influencing our daily lives, from smartphones to medical devices, we rely on various electronic gadgets to make our lives easier. However, not all devices are created equally. Non-typed approved devices pose a lurking danger that many
We
customers
shouldn't leave the child to only one parent.
are unaware of. This report has more. Have you ever seen a phone or any other electronic gadget explode? There might just be one of the non-type approved devices in circulation. Non-type approved devices are electronic gadgets that have not undergone proper testing and certification by the regulatory authorities. These devices might lack the necessary safety measures, quality control, and compliance with industry standards. The implication of using such devices can be severe and far-reaching. One of the mandates of Nigeria Communication Commissions, as enshrined in the Nigerian Communication Act 2003, objectively is the protection of the rights and interests of consumers. Safety is paramount, which is why the Commission continually frowns against the use of non-type approved devices as they remain unfit, causing more harm than good. These devices may carry a higher risk of malfunctions, electric hazard, and overheating. Imagine the potential danger of using a phone that could explode due to low-quality batteries or a medical device that provides inaccurate reading, leading to misdiagnosis. This calls for concern, and some Nigerians share their view.
These are devices not approved by NCC. So they are not approved, they are not approved.
To me, I feel it doesn't have the end. Most of them would spy on your data, so I'm not sure most of them have the end-to-end encryption of data and making your data porous to other people.
There's experience I've gotten about one, which when I was at SON office some time ago at Apapaye, I think there was one which they brought to their office for tests. Immediately they plug is this, what's it called? This extension box. Immediately they plug it, it's caught fired.
Moreover, the use of non-type approved devices can also lead to serious legal consequences, as many countries have stringent regulations in place to ensure the safety and quality of electronic products. Using the devices can violate these laws, subjecting individuals and businesses to legal penalties and fines. Data security is another area of concern, as non-type approved devices may not have adequate data protection measures, leaving users vulnerable to cyber threats, unauthorized access to personal information, resulting in identity theft, financial loss, and privacy breaches. Despite these penalties, some respondents give reasons as to why people still follow this path.
They are cheap, and as a businessman, you go for the cheap things to get your money. So you have to go. But on a nutshell, you are going to be looking at the durability of what you are using, because if the hazard comes on board, the money you are going to spend in rehabilitating what has already spoiled will be much compared to when you've gotten the right stuff in the first place.
If you are doing a genuine business, you look for the one that is approved, so that if something goes wrong, it could be traceable. But if you want to use unapproved, that means you yourself is trying to hide one or two things. You understand? Maybe hiding from regulators, from paying your tax.
Apart from the individual risk, using non-type approved devices can also have a broader impact on society. When consumers unknowingly purchase these devices, they inadvertently support manufacturers who cut corners on safety and compliance. This hampers the growth of legitimate businesses that invest in quality products and adhere to regulations. As more industries and services become dependent on technology, the use of non-type approved devices can hinder progress and innovation. It can lead to capability issues, reduced reliability, and increased cost for businesses that rely on interconnected systems. Apart from home inferior manufactured products, what are other measures or medium through which these devices are moved into the country?
There are so many fake devices which are shipped into the country through either corner borders or not. That is not the one that comes through the main ports, but through corner borders. There are so many fake devices, so it's very hard for them to know the correct one.
There's nothing that comes into this country without passing through the custom, whether at the airport or seaport, no matter how small an gadget is, supposed to pass through the customs. So if customs should do their work very, very well, such devices will not be able to see itself inside the country.
The implications of using non-type approved devices are serious and numerous, from jeopardizing personal safety to compromising data security and hindering progress. These devices pose a significant threat. By promoting awareness, fostering strict regulations, and making informed choices, we can collectively protect ourselves and build a safer, technological advanced society. Grace Komolafe, Souq News.
I'm really impressed by the fact that some Nigerians know non-approved devices, and they have been able to say one or two things about that. But in the spirit of the campaign launched by the Nigeria Communications Commission (NCC) against non-approved type devices, let's bring back the NCC Director of Public Affairs, Ruben Moka. Welcome back, sir. Welcome back, sir.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. Thank you very much for joining us once again. Now, for those who don't know, how can you identify a non-type approved device at face value when you go to the market?
Okay, basically, when you go to the market, we want people to, of course, most service providers or big dealers of devices will not go non-type approved, because especially we target those big dealers, those high-end phone sellers, to ensure that what they have are type approved. So most times they do not sell phones that are not type approved. And the phones by these major manufacturers that you know their names, no need to mention them, before they bring it, they always come to check if they are type approved or not. And also, if they bring another one, maybe model 11 or model 12, any model they bring, they ensure that it's type approved. But most essentially, the NCC website, www.ncc.gov.ng, if you go to NCC website, there are sections where you will see all type approved phones. So that is the best way to go. But also to ensure that you are buying through these, established, standardized places where they sell phones. Because what happens is that most of the non-type approved are devices that they get from gray market, under the table markets, where people smuggle some phones. And even sometimes, especially buying used ones, when people import used phones, some of them might be type approved at the initial end when it is, at the initial time when it's produced, but when it stays its shelf life and exhausted, then people can go abroad, import them through suits and all that, and begin to sell them. So the best way is to buy it from, you will see even those that sell it, that are, they will display some signs to show that they have type approved phones. But basically, we have it in our website. There is no phone that is in use in Nigeria that's type approved that is not available or cannot be seen in our website.
Thank you for that clarification, sir. Perhaps you should help educate the masses there on the dangers of using non-type approved devices. When they hear from your mouth.
Yes, I think I even watched some clips of your news on your field interview on this, and you could see it has a lot of dangers. One, health hazards. You don't know the status of the phone. It can burn your things. It can generate more power than necessary and disrupt your electricity supply, or more dangerously damage your equipment. we don't know we don't recycle. And a lot of those phones, especially used ones that we're bringing, we're increasing our waste management challenges, because you don't know some of those phones, they have batteries, you don't know how they are disposed of and all that. It depreciates quality of service. Sometimes when we talk about quality of service, it's not necessarily what the service provider is giving you that is affected. The quality of your handset, because most of the type approved are standardized and synchronized with the networks, but non-type approved, they are not. So sometimes they depreciate the quality of service to yourself. Sometimes they even depreciate the quality of service for other people, because when those phones that are not of quality are engaging in network transactions, it's not only one person that they're coming across. So it poses that danger. So it is, as I said, it is just not good for people to use non-type approved. You know, when you talk about electrical appliances, when people talk about, radiation this, radiation that, the standardized approved phones do not radiate beyond the standards that are healthy and all that. But you cannot give that guarantee for those that are non-type approved, because this type approval we're talking about is from international standards that have been set for healthy use of these devices.
Now, for companies or businesses who are still in the habit of selling these non-type approved devices, what's the legal implication for them?
The legal implication is there's a regulation against it. In fact, there were times where we are going to raid markets. We have been to Computer Village. We go to especially the centers where they sell phones and engage all the dealers and the types of phones. And we seize them and we prosecute them. So people that are engaged in selling non-type approved phones risk going to jail or paying a huge amount of money as fines if not convicted to jail. So that is a penalty for engaging in sales of non-type approved phones. And of course, we have talked about the danger to the people to the consumers. Even this type approval we're talking about, even the devices, the equipment that the service providers use to provide these services are type approved, because we don't want a situation where we'll be operating at different standards, or even a big operator goes to get an equipment that is not type approved. So even before they import these equipments, we type approve them. So it is something that is very important, from big infrastructure to the devices we use. We tell people that it is not good because it constitutes health hazards, it constitutes danger even to our properties and things like that. So it is not encouraged for people to use non-type approved.
Okay, from what you've said so far, it will seem that the NCC is one of the principal gatekeepers at the point of entry of these electronic devices into the country to check whether they are type approved or not. But then there are other players along the line that determine how far people comply with NCC regulations. What is the level of handshake that NCC has with other regulatory bodies like the Customs Service and so on and so forth to ensure that we check this influx of non-type approved devices? What kind of handshake exists between you and other government agencies that are in charge of supervising this?
Yes, that's good. We do have, in fact, one of our prime focus, strategic focus, is to collaborate with other agencies, whether government or non-governmental. And in this particular issue, we're collaborating with the Standards Organization of Nigeria. We're collaborating with Customs. The standardization, if you come to the airport today or the seaports, you cannot just pass with any form of those equipment. But of course, people smuggle and all that. But we have a collaboration with the Customs. We have with the Standards Organization of Nigeria, which also is interested in standards of equipment that people are using in Nigeria. So we do a lot of collaboration and also, of course, a lot of enlightenment with the people that are selling it. For instance, when I mentioned the computer village in Lagos and some of those places, we also do go and engage with those who are selling and, of course, enlighten them of the importance of type-approved phones. So collaboration is very key.
Now, let's talk about local production of some of these devices. We have come to a point where we are encouraging local production. So what's the process of getting approval for those who want to produce some of these devices locally?
Well, basically the kind of devices we have is the handsets, which is not a simple technology to do. Most of the times, the people that do it are big-time dealers or even the manufacturers themselves who are being encouraged, discussing with them, encourage them to come and build plants in Nigeria in order to also, because they have a lot of market for those devices. So discussions are ongoing at that level. But we also have a national office for indigenous, for telecommunications, for indigenous telecommunications, which we call NODITS for short, which is encouraging all kinds of manufacturing, encouraging indigenous companies to embark on all kinds of manufacturing. And we have in Lagos on the 24th, I think 22nd to 24th, or thereabout, at the Landmark Center, we will be having a NODITS do exhibition where people can come and see what we're able to do by the indigenous companies in terms of telecommunications equipment. And right now, something like SIM cards are manufactured in Nigeria, and the companies are licensed to do that. So anybody that is interested, we have created opportunities for indigenous companies to use either local materials or whatever to produce, so that we are not totally 100% dependent for telecommunications services on foreign imports. So it's a matter of focus for NCC.
Okay, sir. All right. A time was in this country where we had Telecoms Consumer Parliament, which was a platform for telecoms consumers to seek redress for injustice or perceived injustice. But it seems that has been thrown out of the window. My first question is, what has happened to the Telecoms Consumer Parliament? And now that it is no longer existent, let us just assume, how do consumers seek redress?
Okay, let me talk about Telecom Consumer Parliament. Telecom Consumer Parliament is still continuing, but it's not in the form and shape that you used to see it, where people gather in one place. We have made it more like industry representatives, operators, and NCC sitting together to discuss issues that have arisen. But there are different forms of it. We have community town halls. We still have market outreach, where our consumer affairs department go to communities, sit with, sometimes we had meetings with traditional rulers and communities to discuss issues related to telecoms in the presence of the regulator and the telecom operator. So that's in another form, town hall, consumer parliament is still there. But the biggest way we encourage people to render or complain about their services is the number we call 622. 622 is a toll-free line which provides second-level complaints for consumers, so that all consumers do not have to go to the service. You go to the service providers first if you have issues, but we call 622 during work hours from 8 o'clock to 5 p.m. And of course, we are not available at weekends and public holidays. But those all types of complaints, I can tell you that majority, if more than 85% of complaints that have been reported to 622 toll-free number has been resolved. So It is a major outreach for us, a major contact with the consumers to lay their complaints about any issue that service providers are unable to resolve. Because we always encourage people to, first of all, call your service provider, If he's unable to resolve that issue, you can contact 622, ranging from
let's take it from there, sir. You mentioned 622
yes.
now. How responsive has this code been when it comes to addressing customer complaints?
Say it again.
How responsive has this code? How responsive has the code been
that's what I'm saying.
When it comes to addressing customer complaints?
Oh, that's what I said, that if you call it as we speak, they're going to pick up. It's just designed for consumers. Anytime you call it between 8 o'clock and 5 p.m., they are bound to respond to you and take the matter seriously. It's very, very responsive.
Thank you very much, sir. Now, personally, I think a lot of improvement has been seen when it comes to addressing customer issues within the telecom sector. I mean, we are at a time where we have more customer service locations for telecoms companies. In fact, I know that the NCC has done a lot to address this customer disturbance, with rolling out DND numbers and all of these things. But how do you fix problems like dropped calls, network issues when we complain?
Drop calls, we have KPIs, key performance indicators, upon which the service providers are judged. So when people report such things, we want to find out if the operators have met with those key performance indicators. And apart from that, we also found that key performance indicators, sometimes their switches will give you quality service, but your experience, quality of experience will be different. So we actually measure some of those. But some of those, as you mentioned, when we ask, when they are reported by consumers, we take up the issue with the operators and understand why. And if it is something they will need to compensate the consumer, they will do. Remember, we are the regulator, and they are supposed to, they are bound to obey the regulatory frameworks and rules and regulations that we have set.
Okay, thank you, sir. On a very last note, I'd like you to make a prediction. The Nigerian telecom space, 5 years from now, what should we expect based on what NCC is doing and what other stakeholders are doing?
Well, from what I expect in the next 10 years, I mentioned to you that we'll be talking about another generation. We'll be going beyond 5G. And you see that we talk about if 4G gives you a signal within 100 milliseconds, 5G does it in 1 second. By that time, we'll be talking about 0 seconds in 0.0002 milliseconds in transmission. And of course, huge data. A lot of people are predicting even the IoTs, Internet of Things, where your devices at home will be talking and communicating with you and all that. And of course, different developments, artificial intelligence will be huge, and robotics. A lot of people are talking about how jobs will remain if robots will be doing a whole lot of things. But all these are powered by communications. So just as I mentioned, Nigeria will be where the biggest or the latest or most developed countries are, even in telecommunications. So, and it's not always predictable what will happen in telecommunications, especially in the next 5 years. But I believe that at that time, we will be smiling and being able to access the latest of technologies that are available in the industry.
Now, before we go, let's talk about competition in the telecom sector. How do you ensure that these telecom service providers compete fairly, to the advantage of the consumers? For example, lately people have been complaining about high cost of data, and it seems to cut across all networks. So how do we balance that?
Well, as a regulator, we don't allow everybody to do what pleases him. We have a regulation. We actually have cost-based tariff determination. We determine prices. Most of the times, we determine what you call cap, price cap. So we have price floor and price cap. So what we do is to ensure, for instance, the people may be complaining, but if you go to any part of the world, Nigeria does not rank even close to where costs for data are high. If you check, if you can do 500 for 3 gig or something, 1 gig of data for 500, you will know that Nigeria is not the highest. But what we try to do so that people compete favorably is to provide a price floor and price cap upon which they operate. We don't want people to go under the price floor in order to take advantage of others or go higher than predicted. So it is a determination that we have determined those prices were approved, but in a band that they will not go below or go up. But we also believe that the rate with which broadband services in Nigeria are dropping. In fact, the cost that the people are paying now is what is predicted to be for 2025. So we have even crossed the boundary of expectation of what would happen in future. So the prices had continued to drop. And so when the operators also are competing, that's also healthy competition anyway. It helps to continue to bring down the prices of data and, in fact, other telecommunication services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Reuben Moka. As we wrap this up, I just have a plea. Hopefully you take this back and we'll see better results. Because sometimes you mentioned 500 naira for 1 gig. Sometimes you see these gigs cost that low, but by the time you begin to use the gig, you discover that you really can't do much with it. Some Nigerians suspect foul play somewhere. So hopefully you help us look into that so that we'll be able to have a better time using the internet.
All right.
If you permit me, I need to make a little comment about it. It is actually what it is. A lot of people do not know how to use those services. They leave a lot of apps on their background, eating up the data. If they don't switch them up, that's how it costs more money than they think they have paid for.
Thank you.
Okay, we've been having a wonderful discussion with Mr. Reuben Moka, the Director of Public Affairs for the Nigerian Communications Commission. Thank you very much for that wonderful time. It's been very exciting. For over an hour, almost an hour, we've asked questions and he has provided answers for us. And I hope by now that all of us are clear about some gray areas as per telecom service and provision in Nigeria. We'll take a very short break now. When we come back to the issue of the border closure, the Nigeria-Niger diplomatic relationship. We'll explore that in detail with Sam Orowe when we're back. Please stay tuned. If you look at the alphabetical table or the spellings of their names, Nigeria and Niger sound almost alike. As a matter of fact, only two alphabets separate the two. Sometimes when you call a Nigerian, you may be mistaken for calling a Nigerian, as the case may be. But politically, we share two different divides, essentially. Now, we are meant to be neighbors. Geographically, we are neighbors. We are neighbors geographically. But now there is border closure. Niger has closed all airspace. Nigeria has imposed sanctions because of the coup d'etat that took place over a week ago there. These have political implications. These have diplomatic implications. And Sam Oroji is right here beside us as a policy expert. Let's not forget, he is the director of policy research and development for Souq News. So this is his forte. I ask you, Sam, wow, we got here now in the first place. What is the overall implication of this Nigerian diplomatic row for us as a people? Let's start from there.
Thank you very much, Ayo. Before I speak to your specific question, it will be necessary to lay background into the Nigeria-Niger crisis. Fundamentally, Nigeria and Niger relationship date back to the Trans-Sahara trade era, and the aftermath of French and British imperialism of 1890 to 1905 set the stage for some of the things that we'll be discussing. Did you say border closure?
Yes.
Border, yes, in terms of official pronouncement, maybe a border closure. But borders are very fluid lines between two countries. And Niger and Nigeria has a special relationship. Niger is about 25 point something million people. About 18 million of them speak Hausa. So there are a lot of relationship between Nigeria and the Nigerian. So these issues of the diplomatic imbroglio that has occurred as a result of the coup that took place on July 27 need to be examined more carefully, and we will advise government on both sides to be cautious because of the cultural relationship that exists between those two countries. Then the lines are very thin. There are a lot of relationship between the two countries.
Talking of the steps to take to manage the situation we have found ourselves in, we'll get to that because we need to talk about specifics. You know, people keep saying, let's be careful, let's be careful. Things have to be done. But before we get to that, let's quickly get to a brief report. Then I will come back to engage you on what have been the benefits of our diplomatic relationship in the first place. What have we benefited from Niger? What has Niger been benefiting from us in the first place? But let's go for the reports now.
For decades, Nigeria and Niger has shared more than just geographical proximity. Their histories intertwined and their destinies connected. The recent unrest in neighboring Niger has cast a shadow over Nigeria's diplomatic relations with its neighbor, leading to increased tensions and prompting the closure of their shared border. The situation in Niger has not only raised security concerns for Nigeria, but also tested the two nations' historical ties and their ability to collaborate in times of crisis. Niger, a landlocked country in West Africa, has been grappling with internal instability and security challenges. Armed conflict and political unrest in certain regions of Niger have escalated, leading to a degenerating security situation that poses potential threats to neighboring countries, including Nigeria. Nigeria, being one of the largest and most influential countries in the region, cannot remain indifferent to the development in its neighbor. The porous border between the two nations has made it easier for armed groups and criminals to move freely across the border, aggravating security concerns within Nigeria's own territory. The escalating situation in Niger has strained diplomatic relations between the two countries. Nigeria has expressed its concern over the instability in Niger and called for greater cooperation in tackling the root cause of the unrest. However, Nigeria's efforts have been met with challenges as the Nigerian government grapples with its internal issues and prioritizes its response to the crisis. Tensions arise even as Nigeria government seeks more decisive action from Niger in addressing the security threats emanating from its territory. The unrest has tested the ability of both nations to collaborate effectively and address mutual security concerns, highlighting the complexity of diplomacy in times of crisis. As a measure to address the security risks emanating from the unstable regions of Niger, Nigeria has taken the difficult decision to close its border within Niger. The closure is aimed to preventing the free movement of armed groups and criminals between the two countries and to tighten security at the border checkpoints. While the border closure has been implemented with the intent to bolstering security, it has also had significant economic implications for both nations. Across border, trade and movement of people have been disrupted, affecting local communities and businesses that rely on the fluidity of the border for livelihood and economic activities. Amidst the challenges in their diplomatic relations, both Nigeria and Niger recognize the importance of regional cooperation in resolving the crisis. The Economic Community of West Africa States, ECOWAS, and other regional organizations are playing a crucial role in facilitating dialogue and cooperation between the two countries. Nigeria and Niger have expressed their commitment to finding a peaceful resolution to the crisis and are exploring ways to strengthen collaboration in addressing security challenges collectively. The ongoing unrest in Niger is a cause of concern for Nigeria, impacting their diplomatic relations and promoting the closure of their shared border. The situation calls for regional cooperation and collective efforts to address the security threats and promote stability in the region. While the road ahead may be challenging, it is essential for both countries to engage in open dialogue and work together to find lasting solutions that prioritize the safety and well-being of their citizens and promote peace and stability in the region. Grace Komalafe, Souq News.
While that report from Grace Komalafe was very timely, let's get back to the question I asked earlier. What have we benefited from our diplomatic relationship with Niger and vice versa?
All right, thank you. Some of the relationship between Nigeria and Niger date back to the 1800s. You have a lot of cultural relationship. You have diplomatic relationship. You have a consular relationship. Then on the larger scale, you have the Nigeria-Niger Bilateral Commission dating back to 1971. And there's a relationship in terms of the Niger River that drops into the River Niger of Nigeria. So that has been a water basin that supply water into the country. So that bilateral relationship, diplomatic relationship, has existed. And I mentioned earlier, they have a lot of relationship with Nigerians. Over 18 million Nigerian and Nigerians have a common affinity to people in Niger. So therefore, it's important that we underscore the importance of that relationship over a period of time.
Okay. Now that we have established that we have a lot of diplomatic relationships with Niger, and now because of the developments, the recent developments, there is border closure. Even though you said that borders are always open, but at least officially there is no free inflow of people or goods from one country to the other now in the name of this border closure. These have social and economic impacts for both countries. What are they? Can you be very specific this time around?
All right. Officially, the borders are closed. Therefore, the official route in terms of movement between both countries are under lock and key. But in terms of the fluid borders and the relationship that exists between people on this other side, Nigerians, and the other side, Niger, there may be some relationship that are taking place. But the implication for that is that Nigerians supply about 75% electricity to Niger. I understand from paper reviews that the light has been cut off. So to that extent, the earnings that you are likely to get from the supply of electricity, then you can't get it. On the other hand, the electricity that's supplied to Niger, they can't get that. So there's a negative economic impact on both sides of the country. Then in terms of trade, a lot of trade go on through those routes. This has been stopped as a result of the... So they have negative economic impact on both countries. But what is important is that we suggest that the government should be careful in this, because up there, along that route, you have the Sahel region that have been populated by Kupis who are taking over government in those areas. So if you look at the overlapping drivers of conflict within West Africa, which include poverty, good governance, what in the first instance even caused the coup in Niger Republic? Those fundamentals, we need to address them even from the regional perspective, particularly ECOWAS. What are the instigators of coup in recent time, particularly along the Sahel belt in West Africa? So it's very important that we look at those issues more critically and find solutions so that we don't get into this ugly situation that we'll find ourselves lately.
Speaking of solutions, what other options do we have? I know at some point the ECOWAS gave the junta an ultimatum, which has now expired. Nothing has changed. The junta seem to be more resolute, they're still insisting, on letting military take over. And so what options do we have at this point?
I think for me, the option that is available and the only option that we should explore rather than escalating the conflict is track 2 diplomacy, people-to-people diplomacy, where you deploy people to negotiate on behalf of both countries to avoid a military option. So what that means is a high-level delegation was led initially by Abdul Salam with the Sultan of Sokoto with a view to resolving that crisis. We want more of diplomatic negotiation between the country to resolve the crisis. A military option we escalate the tense environment that we're already, because at home we're already dealing with kidnapping, banditry, and violent conflict, and we cannot add another type of additional crisis if we resort to military option. So the win-win option is the diplomatic option. So people-to-people diplomacy should be deployed by both governments to resolve the crisis, in my view.
Okay, you were talking about the Sahel region, the countries that border with Nigeria. They're from Mali to Niger,
Burkina Faso, Mali,
and
Chad,
each of them has gone through this coup d'etat. What does this say to the stability of the region? I mean, there's a pattern now that seems to be growing. What does it say to the stability of the region?
Yes, on one hand, what is important is that the region, at the regional level, particularly at ECOWAS regional level, we need to step up our level of good governance, because once you have good governance, this issue of conflicts will be reduced minimally. So those people, the impact of Libya and the renegade that came from those Libya crises have instigated a lot of crises, particularly along the Sahel. So what is important, the government should engage more with the military and provide good governance to reduce poverty, find a way to seek more diplomatic option to resolve the current crisis. But what is important within the sub-region is to provide good governance so that this idea of some extremism that has occurred, particularly in the Sahel, does not impact on us negatively.
Now, let's talk about the growing influence of Russia. A good number of people have pointed at Russia, and working with the military juntas perpetrating this coup. Whether that is true or not, if something has happened in 2, 3, 4 different countries around you, and one person has been, pointed, like we're pointing fingers at another, maybe a world, a big country having influence, allegedly. It's only a matter of time, before the influence grows bigger. What kind of stand do you think Nigeria should be taking with or against Russia at this point in time?
In the realm of international politics, you cannot rule out external influence, but it would be very bad to speculate at this particular point in time the role of Russia in the crisis in Niger. Those are in the realm of speculation. But what is important is that, like I mentioned earlier, we should seek diplomatic option in trying to resolve the crisis. So speculation will not augur well, but what is important is that the government of both countries should continue to explore diplomatic option within the regional body, within the African Union, or within the international system to see how we can resolve that crisis. We are already inundated with a lot of crises, which I mentioned earlier, particularly in the Sahel. Burkina Faso, Chad, Mali are in those threshold of military regime. So if you escalate this problem, we don't know where this can take us to. So the role of Russia, based on speculation, to a very large extent may be true, but then what is important, we should explore the diplomatic relationship between the country. The regional body need to look inward and see how they can resolve this beyond the sanctions that are imposed, beyond the call for military intervention.
Okay. A time was when there was collaboration between Nigeria and Niger to fight terrorism. There were times when Niger got to, eliminate some terrorists, probably that were fleeing from Nigeria. But with this current tension, how does that affect the fight against terrorism?
I know there's a joint task force between Nigeria and Niger, military task force. That task force still exists. To what extent this crisis will affect that, we don't have information to that. But what is important is that that joint task force is there. Whether this severance of relationship affects that task force needs to be seen from those who are involved in the conflict resolution mechanism that is taking place currently.
Now, let's talk about other options that we can explore. You mentioned that the only major option there is dialogue. And I understand from what I know of international relations, there is the major channel and there are back channels, that back channel negotiations that happen, not majorly involving the known government officials that we know. Is this also something that you think will do a lot of good in this case?
Yeah, that's what I addressed earlier, people-to-people diplomacy, which is called track-to diplomacy. There are cultural exchanges, you can use those. There are diplomatic routes that can be exploited through the regional body, through other top diplomats that can help to resolve the crisis. Not forgetting the fact that you have the French, who had a colonial relationship with Niger. We can equally exploit those options as well. But it's important that the diplomatic option is the only option, in my view, that must be exploited to resolve this crisis on our hand.
Okay, we'll wait to see how the ECOWAS member states explore the diplomatic options, and we'll wait to see how Nigerians themselves, embrace these options so that we don't have a war on our hand. In any war, there is really no victor and no vanquished, like they say, because there's always something called collateral damage every time war breaks out. And it is on that note when today's show. Thank you for being part of the show. All the guests that are featured on the program today, we say very, very big thank you. And our in-house analyst, Sam Orowuche, Director of Policy, Research and Development for Femi Watch Limited. Thank you for coming on the show today. You've actually added to the body of knowledge. My name is Ayo Jimmy. I'll see you tomorrow. Ola.
Yes, I am Olaoluwa Awe. Thank you all for watching. A special thank you to the production crew. Thank you all for watching once again. We'll continue this tomorrow, 7 o'clock till 10 o'clock. Stay tuned.